On a stormy autumn evening in Cedar Rapids, veteran firefighter James Mitchell does what he's done countless times before. He saves a life. The woman in the rushing river seems like just another rescue until she regains consciousness. On the riverbank, soaked and shivering, she reaches into her coat pocket and hands him a folded note. His hands tremble as he reads his own name written in faded ink, followed by details about his past that he's never shared with anyone. Details about that summer night 25 years ago when everything changed. The note ends with 7 words that turn his world upside down. They know what happened. You're not safe anymore. What dark secret could be worth dying to protect after all these years? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Steam rose from James Mitchell's coffee mug, swirling in the pre-dawn air of Cedar Rapids Fire Station 3. 25 years of morning rituals had worn smooth grooves into his routine. Coffee at 5:30 a.m., equipment check at 5:45, then the quiet moments before shift change when he could breathe in the familiar scents of diesel fuel and polished brass that had become home. His calloused fingers traced the worn edges of his badge, number 471, as he stared at his reflection in the bay window. At 52, his face had weathered like old leather, creased with lines that told stories of countless rescues and too many sleepless nights. Salt and pepper hair had given way to more salt than pepper, but his eyes remained sharp, alert, ready. For the next call. "Morning, Cap," Tommy Chen called out, his boots squeaking against the freshly waxed floor. The kid, though at 32 he wasn't really a kid anymore, had been with the station for 8 years now. "You're here early." Again, James managed a slight smile. "Sleep's overrated, Tommy. Besides, someone's got to make sure you youngsters don't scratch the paint on my engine." The truth was, sleep had become increasingly elusive over the past few weeks. The dreams had returned, fragments of that summer night in 2000, when the warehouse fire on 3rd Street had changed everything. He'd never told anyone the full story, not even Marie, before the cancer took her 3 years ago. Some burdens were meant to be carried alone. "The crew's worried about you, Cap," Tommy said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "You've been different lately. More distant." James turned away from his reflection, focusing instead on the wall of photos behind his desk. Each one captured a moment frozen in time: rescues, celebrations, memorials. His eyes lingered on a yellowed newspaper clipping from 1999, carefully preserved behind glass. "Firefighter saves family of 4, the headline proclaimed. It was from before the warehouse, before the choice that had haunted him for a quarter century. Just getting old, Tommy. Makes a man reflective. James picked up his clipboard, signaling an end to the conversation. "Let's run through the equipment check." Miller's crew left a note about the jaws of life acting up on their shift. The morning progressed with its familiar rhythm. James led his crew through their paces, checking every piece of equipment with the thoroughness that had become his trademark. Each inspection was a ritual, a prayer of sorts, that when the moment came, when lives hung in the balance, their tools would not fail them. By mid-morning, they'd already handled 2 calls: a kitchen fire in a downtown apartment and an elderly man with chest pains. Routine calls, the kind that made up the fabric of their daily lives. But James couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had been growing stronger with each passing day. During lunch, he found himself studying the faces of his crew. Tommy, whose quick thinking had saved a trapped child last month. Sarah Rodriguez, their newest member but already proving herself invaluable. Mike O'Donnell, a 20-year veteran who could read smoke patterns like others read books. They were more than a crew. They were family, and families protected their own. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the station windows when the scanner crackled to life. Station 3, respond to possible drowning, Cedar River near Ellis Park, female victim in water, multiple witnesses on scene. James was moving before the call ended, muscle memory taking over as he slid into his turnout gear. His crew followed suit, a well-oiled machine springing into action. As he climbed into the captain's seat, a chill ran down his spine, one that had nothing to do with the autumn air. "Cap?" Tommy's voice carried a note of concern as they pulled out of the station, sirens wailing. "I'm fine," James replied, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. But he wasn't fine. Something about this call felt different, wrong, like the universe was holding its breath, waiting for a shoe to drop. The Ellis Park boat ramp came into view, where a small crowd had gathered at the water's edge. The river, swollen from recent rains, churned angry and brown. James could see the woman immediately, a dark shape being swept downstream, occasionally disappearing beneath the surface. As he stepped down from the engine, time seemed to slow. The air grew thick with possibility and dread. 25 years of experience told him this wasn't just another rescue. This was something else, something that tasted like destiny and smelled like fear. He didn't know it yet, but in the next few minutes, everything would change. The carefully constructed walls he'd built around his past were about to come crashing down, swept away like debris in the rushing waters of the Cedar River. And it would all start with a folded piece of paper tucked away in a drowning woman's pocket, bearing his name in faded ink. But for now, James Mitchell did what he'd done countless times before. He stepped forward, ready to save a life, unaware that this rescue would force him to finally face the one person he'd never been able to save: himself. The Cedar River stretched before James like a writhing serpent, its brown waters churning with recent rainfall. Wind whipped across the surface, carrying the sharp scent of wet earth and approaching winter. He tracked the woman's position downstream, noting how she fought against the current, not the panicked thrashing of an amateur swimmer, but the calculated movements of someone who knew water. Rodriguez, O'Donnell, deployment positions. "Tommy, get me a rope gun and the underwater beacon." James's commands cut through the chaos of crying witnesses and whipping wind. His crew moved with practiced precision, each understanding their role in the mechanical ballet of river rescue. An old newspaper clipping flashed through his mind, yellowed with age, tucked away in his locker. Another river rescue, another woman. September 12th, 2000, 3 days before the warehouse fire that changed everything. He pushed the memory aside. "She's going under!" a witness screamed from the shoreline. James stripped off his heavy outer gear, keeping only his water rescue equipment. The woman had disappeared beneath the surface, but he'd memorized her trajectory. 25 years of river rescues had taught him to read water like others read books, every ripple, every current telling its own story. "Cap, water temperature's 48 degrees. Tommy reported, handing him the rescue rope. "You've got maybe 20 minutes before hypothermia becomes critical." James nodded, securing the line. "If I'm not back in 10, send in Rodriguez." He didn't wait for a response before plunging into the river. The cold hit like a physical blow, driving the air from his lungs. But cold was an old friend, a reminder that he was still alive, still able to make a difference. He struck out toward the woman's last known position, letting the current carry him while he conserved energy. There, a flash of dark coat beneath the surface. James dove, the murky water stinging his eyes. His hands found fabric, then an arm. The woman's eyes opened as he gripped her, startlingly alert despite the cold. She didn't struggle as he pulled her toward the surface, matching his movements with an almost unnatural calm. They broke through together, gasping in the autumn air. "I've got you," James said, his voice steady despite the cold, threatening to lock his muscles. "Just breathe, let me do the work." The woman's eyes fixed on his face with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine, unrelated to the water temperature. Her lips moved, forming words lost to the river's roar, but James could have sworn she'd said his name. Tommy and Rodriguez were waiting at the shore with thermal blankets and the medical kit. As they helped pull the woman from the water, James noticed how her hand stayed clenched around something in her coat pocket, protecting it even as hypothermia set in. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to check you for injuries," Rodriguez said, approaching with a blanket. "Can you tell me your name?" The woman's eyes never left James. "Sarah," she managed through chattering teeth. "Sarah Collins." She reached into her pocket with trembling fingers, drawing out a folded piece of paper protected by a plastic bag. "For you, Captain Mitchell." The use of his name and rank sent warning bells ringing through James's mind. He hadn't introduced himself. Taking the paper, he noticed how the plastic bag was new, but the paper inside was aged, its creases well worn from repeated folding and unfolding. "How did you—" he began. But Sarah's eyes were already closing, her body finally surrendering. "To the cold. BP's dropping," Rodriguez called out. "We need to get her warm now." As the paramedics arrived and took over Sarah's care, James stood dripping on the shore, staring at the protected note in his hands. Part of him wanted to throw it in the river, to let the current carry away whatever ghosts from his past had come calling. But he'd spent 25 years running from the truth of that warehouse fire. Maybe it was time to stop running. With fingers numbed by cold and dread, he opened the plastic bag. The paper inside was yellow with age, its edges soft from handling. His name was written across the top in faded blue ink, handwriting he recognized immediately. It belonged to Danny Martinez, his mentor, his friend, the man who died in the warehouse fire all those years ago, or at least, that's what the official report had said. The first paragraph stopped his heart colder than any river could. "James, if you're reading this, then Sarah found you. And if Sarah found you, then they've discovered what really happened that night. Everything we did, everything we sacrificed, it wasn't enough. They're coming for the evidence, and they're coming for anyone who knows the truth. You're not safe anymore. None of us are." James looked up at the ambulance where Sarah was being treated. Through the window, he could see her watching him, her eyes now clear and focused. She gave him a slight nod, one that carried the weight of decades of secrets. The paper trembled in his hands as distant thunder rolled across the river. A storm was coming, in more ways than one, and this time James Mitchell couldn't simply wash away the past with dedicated service and carefully maintained silence. Tommy approached, concern etched on his features. "Cap, the chief's going to want a report. You okay?" James carefully folded the note and slipped it into his pocket. "No, Tommy, I don't think I am." He watched as the ambulance pulled away, its sirens silent. Sarah's condition apparently not critical enough to warrant urgency. "And I don't think I will be for a while." Above them, storm clouds gathered over Cedar Rapids, promising a long night ahead. James could feel the weight of Danny's note in his pocket, heavy with unspoken truths and unavoidable reckonings. The river rolled on behind him, indifferent to the secrets it had just delivered to his doorstep. James sat in his truck in the hospital parking lot, raindrops drumming against the roof like impatient fingers. The note lay on his passenger seat, innocent-looking despite the weight of its words. He'd read it 7 times now, each reading revealing new layers of dread beneath Danny's careful penmanship. "James, if you're reading this, then Sarah found you. And if Sarah found you, then they've discovered what really happened that night. Everything we did, everything we sacrificed, it wasn't enough. They're coming for the evidence, and they're coming for anyone who knows the truth. You're not safe anymore. None of us are. Remember the storage unit I told you about? The one under Margaret's maiden name? Everything's there. The original plans, the modified inspection reports, the photos, most importantly, the ledger. It proves what we suspected about the fire suppressant systems in all those buildings, how they were deliberately sabotaged, how many people died because of corner cutting and greed. I didn't die in that warehouse, James. I ran. I ran because they gave me a choice, disappear or watch them destroy everything and everyone I cared about. I chose to become a ghost, But now they're excavating the old industrial district. When they tear down the warehouse, they'll find what I hid in the foundation. And when they do, all our ghosts will come screaming back to life. Sarah is my daughter. Trust her like you trusted me. She's been watching them for years, gathering evidence, building a case, but she needs your help. You're the only other person who knows what really happened that night. The key to the storage unit is where we used to hide our emergency cigarettes, behind the loose brick in the station's east wall. Get everything out. Take it to reporter Angela Chen at the Cedar Rapids Gazette. She's been investigating similar cases across the Midwest. Be careful, old friend. The people we're dealing with, they've got badges now, positions of power. They've been burying their mistakes for 25 years, and they won't hesitate to bury anyone who threatens to dig them up. I'm sorry for letting you carry this burden alone all these years. I'm sorry for making you think I was dead. But most of all, I'm sorry for what I'm about to drag you into. Watch your back. Trust no one at the department except your immediate crew. And James, check your truck for trackers. They like to know where their loose ends are. Danny James's hands shook as he folded the note again. The rain had intensified, blurring the hospital's lights into watery halos. Danny was alive. The knowledge sat in his chest like a stone, heavy. With equal parts relief and betrayal, he reached for his phone, then stopped. Who could he trust? Danny's warning about badges and positions of power echoed in his mind. The fire marshal who'd investigated the warehouse fire was now the city's director of public safety. The building inspector who'd signed off on all those faulty systems was a state senator. A tap on his window nearly stopped his heart. Sarah Collins stood in the rain, wearing hospital scrubs and a borrowed coat. Her eyes carried the same intensity they'd had in the river, the same determination he used to see in Danny's. James lowered the window. You're supposed to be under observation for hypothermia, and you're supposed to be checking your truck for trackers. She glanced meaningfully at his undercarriage. There's one on your rear axle, standard issue police department model. They probably installed it this afternoon while you were at the station. The casual way she delivered this information sent a chill through him. How do you know so much? About police trackers? The same way I know about the 3 unmarked cars that have been watching your house for the past week. Sarah's voice was quiet, controlled. I've been doing this a long time, Captain Mitchell. Now, are you going to help me finish what my father started, or do I need to disappear like he did? James studied her face, Danny's determined chin, but her mother's eyes? Margaret. He remembered her from station picnics and holiday parties. She died of natural causes 6 months after Danny's supposed death. The storage unit, he said. We need to get there first. Sarah nodded, already moving toward the passenger side. They'll be watching it. Probably have been since they found out I was in town, but they don't know about the secondary location. Secondary location? Dad didn't tell you everything in that note. Some things can only be explained in person. She slid into the truck, bringing the scent of rain and hospital antiseptic with her. We need to move fast. That tracker's been broadcasting your location for hours. James started the engine, memories of the warehouse fire flickering through. His mind, the strange smell before the explosion, the way the fire had moved against the ventilation system's flow, the bodies they'd found in the office, 3 men who had no reason to be there that late at night. Your father, he said as they pulled out of the parking lot. He was investigating them before the fire, wasn't he? That's what all those late-night inspections were really about. Sarah pulled a small electronic device from her coat pocket and began scanning the truck's interior. He discovered that someone was deliberately modifying fire suppression systems in buildings across the Midwest, making them look functional during inspections, but ensuring they'd fail when needed. The insurance payouts were just the beginning. The real money came from the property acquisitions afterward. James took a sharp turn, watching his mirrors for tails. How deep does this go? Deep enough that they've killed 27 people to keep it quiet. Sarah's device beeped near the dashboard. Another tracker, newer model. They're not taking any chances with you. The rain drummed harder as they drove through Cedar Rapids' darkening streets. James thought about his crew, about the life he'd built in the years since the warehouse, about Marie, who died believing her husband was simply dedicated to his job, never knowing he was actually hiding from his past. "We'll need help," he said, taking another turn to throw off any pursuit. "People we can trust." Sarah's smile was grim in the dashboard light. "That's the thing about fires, Captain Mitchell. They have a way of showing you what's real and what's just facade. By the time this is over, you'll know exactly who you can trust." She paused, checking her phone. "Turn left here. We need to make a stop before the storage unit." "Where?" "The old Martinez house. Dad left something there that will help us understand the bigger picture." She looked at him, her expression softening slightly. "And Captain, thank you for pulling me out of the river, for believing me, for being the man my father always said you were." James gripped the steering wheel tighter, remembering Danny's words from 25 years ago. "Sometimes, kid, doing the right thing means walking through fire." The rain continued to fall as they drove through the city, each drop carrying whispers of long-buried secrets and approaching storms. Behind them, unseen in the darkness, two black SUVs pulled out into traffic, their headlights dim against the wet streets. The Martinez house huddled in the darkness like a forgotten memory. Paint peeled from its Victorian trim, and the once immaculate garden had surrendered to wilderness. James killed the truck's engine half a block away, muscle memory from tactical training he'd hoped never to use again. "No lights," Sarah whispered, though they hadn't seen another car for miles. "The back door has a false panel. Dad installed it after Mum started getting the threats." The rain had settled into a fine mist, coating everything in a glassy sheen. As they crossed the overgrown yard, James couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking through a photograph, a moment frozen in time, preserved exactly as it had been the night Danny died. Sarah worked quickly at the door, her fingers finding the hidden catch with practiced ease. Inside, the house smelled of dust and abandonment. Moonlight filtered through grimy windows, casting strange shadows on walls still decorated with faded family photos. "There." Sarah pointed to a portrait of Danny in his dress uniform, proudly displaying his captain's bars. Behind that frame, James lifted the photo carefully, revealing a wall safe he'd never known existed. Sarah stepped forward, spinning the dial with confident movements. Mom's birthday, Dad's badge number, the date they met. He always said the best passwords tell a story. The safe clicked open, revealing a stack of blueprints and a leather-bound ledger. But what caught James's attention was a single Polaroid photo yellowed with age. It showed Danny standing with three men he didn't recognize, all wearing expensive suits. On the back, written in Danny's neat hand, "Insurance adjusters? Look closer." "Those men," Sarah said, her voice tight. "They were found in the warehouse office. The official report said they died in the fire. But that's not what really happened, is it?" "No, they were dead before the fire started. Dad saw them being carried in. That's when he knew he had to run." Sarah carefully tucked the documents into her waterproof bag. "These blueprints show the modified suppression systems. The ledger tracks every building they sabotaged, every death they caused, every property they acquired afterward." A floorboard creaked upstairs. They froze, eyes meeting in the darkness. Sarah's hand disappeared into her jacket, emerging with a small pistol. James raised an eyebrow. She was more prepared than he'd realized. "Two sets of footsteps," she breathed, barely audible. "They're good, but not good enough." James felt oddly calm, the same clarity he experienced during difficult rescues settled over him, time slowing, details sharpening. "Back door." "Probably watched. They let us come in, so they could trap us here." James finished her thought, already scanning the room for options. "Your father teach you about the coal chute?" Sarah's eyes widened slightly. "The what?" "These Old houses, they all had coal chutes leading to the basement, usually covered up during renovations, but James moved to the kitchen, running his hands along the baseboard. Danny kept this one clear, said it might come in handy someday. The footsteps above grew closer. A voice crackled over. A radio, too quiet to make out the words. Sarah kept her gun trained on the stairs, while James found the hidden panel. "Ladies first," he whispered, pulling it open. Sarah hesitated. "The documents mean nothing if we're dead. Go." She slipped into the narrow passage just as a flashlight beam cut through the darkness upstairs. James followed, pulling the panel closed behind them. The chute was tight, steep, and smelled of ancient coal dust. They slid, more than climbed, emerging behind a false wall in the basement. "Blood pressure monitors," Sarah explained when James noticed her checking a phone app. "Installed them in my shoes. If my vitals spike, it alerts my contact at the FBI." "You have FBI contacts?" "Just one. She's been building a case for years, but can't move without hard evidence." Sarah checked the basement windows. "We need to—" The explosion cut her off. The blast wave threw them against the far wall as the house's ancient timbers groaned. Fire roared to life above them with unnatural speed, feeding on accelerants that had clearly been planted in advance. "They're burning the evidence," Sarah coughed, struggling to her feet, "making it look like an accident." James grabbed her arm, pulling her toward a root cellar door he remembered from childhood visits. "They're burning more than evidence. They're tying up loose ends." They burst out into the rain-soaked yard, just as the upper floor collapsed. Through the flames, James caught a glimpse of two figures watching from the street, their silhouettes professional, patient, familiar with violence. "Run," he ordered, pushing Sarah toward the back fence. "My crew chief's cabin, Lake McBride, 20 miles north. I'll meet you there. They'll follow you." "That's the plan." James gave her the ghost of a smile. "Been a while since I've had a good chase." Sarah hesitated, then pressed something into his hand, a small USB drive. "Everything's backed up. Keep it safe." Then she was gone, disappearing into the darkness between houses as sirens began to wail in the distance. James sprinted for his truck, making no attempt to hide his direction. The two figures moved immediately, heading for their vehicle. As he peeled away from the curb, heart pounding in sync with the engine's roar, a memory surfaced. Danny's voice during a training exercise years ago. "Sometimes the best way to fight fire is to light one of your own." James checked his mirrors, confirming. His tail. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed Tommy's number. After 3 rings, his trusted crew member answered. "Cap, where are you? The scanner's going crazy about a house fire." "Tommy, listen carefully. I need you to trust me, and I need you to get to the station right now. Check behind the loose brick in the east wall. Get whatever you find there and take it straight to Angela Chen at the Gazette. Don't tell anyone. Don't trust anyone outside the immediate crew." "Cap, what's going on?" "The truth, Tommy. After 25 years, the truth is finally catching." "Fire!" James ended the call and pressed the accelerator, heading for the industrial district. Behind him, the Martinez house burned like a funeral pyre, sending sparks into the rain-dark sky. He had a plan forming. Dangerous, probably stupid, but the kind of plan Danny would have appreciated. If they wanted to burn away the past, he'd give them a fire they'd never forget. James throttled his truck through Cedar Rapids Industrial District, rain-slick streets reflecting the sodium lights above. The 2 black SUVs stayed with him, professional but not subtle. They wanted him to know he was being followed. His phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. "Got it. Meeting Chen now. Be careful, Cap. Good kid, Tommy. Smart enough to keep it brief. Careful enough not to ask questions." James allowed himself a grim smile as he turned toward the abandoned warehouses where everything had started 25 years ago. The USB drive Sarah had given him felt heavy in his pocket. He'd seen enough to know it contained more than just building plans and ledgers. There were photographs, death certificates, insurance claims, a quarter-century of carefully documented corruption, all pointing to a single source: Midwest Municipal Development Corporation. His headlights swept across the chain-link fence surrounding Warehouse 17. The padlock on the gate was new, but the memories were old. Danny's voice on the radio, thick with urgency. "James, get out! They're not here for—" Then static, then flames. James cut his lights and pulled into the shadow of a loading dock 2 buildings over. In his mirrors, the SUVs split up, one circling wide, the other holding position. Standard tactical containment. These weren't ordinary thugs. They moved like law enforcement or military. His phone vibrated again. Unknown number. Rather bold. "Of you, Captain Mitchell," a woman's voice said when he answered. "Cultured, confident, familiar. Coming back to where it all began." Commissioner Hayes. James kept his voice steady despite the ice in his veins. Rebecca Hayes had been a junior, fire investigator during the warehouse investigation. Now she ran the entire department. "I was wondering when you'd show up. You should have stayed focused on your rescues, James. Left the past where it belonged." A pause. Danny made the same mistake. Couldn't let sleeping dogs lie. "Those dogs were never sleeping, Commissioner. They were just waiting for the right moment to bite. Look at your situation objectively. You're alone, cornered, with evidence that won't stand up in court. Even if it did, do you think the system would allow itself to be exposed? How many judges do you think we own? How many reporters?" James watched the SUV's position in his mirrors. Not all of them, apparently. Angela Chen seems pretty independent. Ms. Chen is being handled as we speak. The casual way Hayes delivered the threat made James's blood run cold. He thought of Tommy, heading into what might be an ambush. His fingers flew across the phone, typing a warning text one-handed. "You know what your problem is, Rebecca? You think this is still just about the warehouse fire, about Danny's evidence. But Sarah's been busy for years, hasn't she, building a case that goes way beyond Cedar Rapids." A slight catch in Hayes's breathing told him he'd struck a nerve. "How many other firefighters figured it out over the years?" he pressed. "How many other Danny Martinez's did you force into hiding? Into graves? You have no idea what you're dealing with," Hayes snapped. "This goes higher than you can imagine. We're talking about billions in development contracts, entire city districts rebuilt on foundations of corpses, on foundations of progress." Hayes's composure cracked. "Sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the greater good. You're a firefighter, James. You understand triage. I understand murder for profit." James started his engine. "And I understand that the FBI takes a dim view of municipal corruption. Sarah's contact there, the one who's been building a case for years. She's very interested in that USB drive. I'm carrying." The SUV's engine growled to life. "There is no drive," Hayes said flatly. "There won't be any evidence when that truck burns. Just another tragic accident. A decorated firefighter, troubled by PTSD, taking one last drive through his old haunts." James gunned the engine. "You know what Danny used to say about fire, Rebecca? He said it's not the flames that kill you. It's the smoke, the things you don't see coming." He dropped the phone and floored the accelerator. The truck burst from the shadows just as the SUVs converged, but instead of fleeing, he drove straight. At Warehouse 17's gates, the chain link crumpled under his bumper as Hayes's voice squawked from the abandoned phone. "Stop him! The foundation!" The truck skidded to a stop in the center of the warehouse floor. James was already moving, diving clear as headlights swept in through the broken gates. He rolled behind a concrete pillar just as the first shots rang out. "Check." "The truck!" a male voice barked. "Find that drive." James smiled in the darkness. The USB drive was already gone, taped under Tommy's motorcycle seat when the kid left the station. What these men would find in the truck was something far more interesting. Danny's original case files, which they'd spent precious minutes trying to verify. Minutes that would give Tommy time to reach Chen. Minutes that would let Sarah make it safely to the cabin. Minutes that would let James put the next phase of his plan into action. He reached into his jacket and removed what looked like an ancient cigarette lighter, Danny's lucky charm, recovered from the Martinez house safe. But when he flipped it open, instead of a flame, a small screen flickered to life. 25 years ago, Danny hadn't just been investigating the faulty fire suppression systems. He'd been mapping them, creating a digital record of every modified sprinkler head, every sabotaged control panel. And he'd hidden that map in the one place they'd never think to look, inside his ever-present lighter. James heard footsteps approaching. His position. The beam of a tactical flashlight swept past. Through gaps in the warehouse's broken windows, he could see more vehicles arriving. Hayes was taking no chances. His fingers moved across the lighter's hidden keypad, entering the sequence. Danny had written in the margins of the ledger. On the tiny screen, a blueprint appeared, not of Warehouse 17, but of the entire industrial district's underground infrastructure, including the web of modified sprinkler systems that were still in place, still charged after all these years, waiting for the right signal. "Found something," a voice called from the truck. "Old files, photos." James pressed the final key. Above him, the warehouse's ancient sprinkler system groaned to life. But instead of water, something else began to spray from the nozzles, something that smelled of rust and old chemicals. "What the hell?" someone shouted. "Is that gas?" Hayes's voice cut through the confusion. "Everyone out! Now!" But James knew it was already too late. The same sabotage systems that had turned the warehouse into a death trap 25 years ago were now going to serve a different purpose. They were going to expose the truth, one pressurized pipe at a time. He pulled Danny's old breathing mask from his jacket and strapped it on. Then he took out his phone and pressed send on a pre-written message to Angela Chen. "Check the industrial district's maintenance tunnels. Follow the pipes. The evidence isn't buried in the foundation. It is the foundation." Through his mask, James smiled grimly. Hayes had been right about one thing. Sometimes sacrifices had to be made for the greater good, and tonight the sacrifice would be every carefully buried secret in Cedar Rapids' corrupt infrastructure. Chaos erupted in Warehouse 17 as Hayes's team scrambled to escape the spreading gas. Through his breathing mask, James watched them flee, their tactical discipline dissolving into panic. He counted 6 figures running for the exits, but Hayes wasn't among them. "You think this is clever, James?" Her voice echoed from the shadows, distorted by what had to be her own breathing apparatus. "Turning our own systems against us?" James moved silently between the concrete pillars, Danny's lighter-turned computer casting a faint blue glow on his mask. The blueprint showed a maintenance access hatch 20 feet to his left, the entrance to a tunnel system that honeycombed the entire industrial district. "Tell me something, Rebecca," he called out, making his voice bounce off multiple surfaces. "How many other warehouses are connected to these pipes? How many other accidents are you sitting on?" A shot cracked through the darkness, spalling, and concrete near his head. Hayes was good. She'd nearly traced his voice, but she'd also revealed her position. "You have no idea what you've done," she snarled. "Those tunnels were sealed for a reason. The evidence is exactly where Danny said it would be, in the pipes themselves." James reached the access hatch, his fingers finding the recessed handle. Every modified sprinkler head, every sabotaged valve, every inch of corrupted infrastructure, all stamped with Midwest Municipal's manufacturer's code. All installed under very specific building permits, all signed off by very specific inspectors. Another shot, closer this time. Hayes was moving parallel to him, trying to cut off his escape route. "Even if Chen publishes," Hayes said, "we'll discredit her, call it conspiracy theories, urban legends about forgotten tunnels. Maybe." James lifted the hatch silently, revealing a metal ladder descending into darkness. "But Sarah's FBI contact isn't interested in newspaper stories. She's interested in the pattern." 27 deaths across 4 states, all linked to building fires where the suppression systems failed, all followed by property acquisitions through shell companies leading back to Midwest Municipal. He heard Hayes's breath catch. How did the USB drive you're so desperate to find? It's not just Danny's evidence, it's Sarah's too. 5 years of connecting dots, tracking money, finding witnesses. James smiled grimly behind his mask. She's her father's daughter, Rebecca. Patient, methodical, and very, very thorough. A figure lunged through the gas-filled air. Flashlight, beam cutting through the chemical haze. James dropped instinctively, sweeping his leg out. Hayes crashed to the ground, her gun skittering away, but she was up again in an instant, combat-trained like her team. "You're right about one thing," she spat, circling him in a fighter's crouch. "This goes higher than Cedar Rapids. We're talking state contracts, federal funding, development deals worth billions. You think your evidence can touch people at that level?" "No," James admitted, keeping the access hatch behind him. "But RICO investigations can. Sarah's FBI contact has been building a case for years. All she needed was proof of the pattern, proof that these weren't isolated incidents." Hayes laughed, but there was an edge of desperation in it. "You're bluffing. There's no FBI investigation. Check your phone. Right now, Tommy Chen is meeting with Angela Chen at the Gazette. She's going to publish everything we have, not because it's enough to convict, but because it's enough to spook your partners. And scared people make mistakes. Tommy Chen is dead," Hayes snarled. "Along with your precious reporter, we sent a team—" "To the Gazette?" James allowed himself a grim smile. "Tommy's smarter than that. He's meeting Chen at the one place you'd never think to look, the place where this all started." Understanding dawned in Hayes's eyes. The old fire station, where Danny hid his original evidence. In the same place he left the key to the storage unit. James took a step back, closer to the hatch. By now, Tommy and Chen have everything. The story will break by morning. Hayes moved with sudden, violent speed, pulling a backup weapon from her ankle holster, but James had been waiting for it. He threw Danny's lighter directly at her mask. She ducked instinctively, and in that moment of distraction, he dropped through the hatch. The impact of hitting the tunnel floor sent pain shooting through his legs, but he was moving instantly, turning the fall into a roll. Above him, Hayes's frustrated scream echoed down the shaft, followed by more gunshots. But James wasn't worried about Hayes anymore. She had bigger problems. The gas he'd released wasn't just for show. It was marking evidence. The chemicals would react with the modified materials in the sprinkler systems, staining them a distinctive blue. By morning, every corrupted pipe in the district would be clearly marked for investigators. He pulled out his phone as he ran through the tunnel, its weak light revealing decades of industrial history. The walls were lined with pipes and conduits, many bearing Midwest Municipal's distinctive stamp. Every few feet, a blue stain was spreading where the gas had found its target. A text from Tommy lit up his screen. "Package delivered. Chen says, 'It's bigger than we thought. You need to see this.'" Another message followed immediately. "Sarah called. Says to tell you the FBI is moving tonight." James allowed himself a moment of relief before focusing on navigation. The tunnels were a maze, but Danny's map had seared itself into his memory. He knew where he needed to go, the one place Hayes and her team wouldn't dare follow. The old pump station, the heart of the district's water system. And if Danny's notes were correct, the place where all of Midwest Municipal's secrets quite literally converged. Behind him, he could hear voices echoing through the tunnels. Hayes's team had recovered their nerve and were in pursuit, but they didn't know these passages like he did. Didn't know about the secondary systems Danny had discovered, the ones installed during Prohibition, when these tunnels served a different purpose. James reached a junction and turned east, following the largest pipes. In his mind, he could hear Danny's voice from that long-ago night. "The truth is like water, kid. You can divert it, you can dam it up, but eventually it finds its way to the surface. The pipes above him were turning blue, marking decades of corruption with methodical chemistry. Soon the pattern would be impossible to ignore. And somewhere, in the city, Tommy and Angela Chen were about to turn on the floodgates. The old pump station loomed before James like a cathedral of rust and iron, its massive machines silent sentinels in the darkness. His flashlight beam caught the edges of ancient gauges and control panels, their faces clouded with decades of grime, but one panel looked recently cleaned, its surface marked with fresh fingerprints. His phone buzzed. "Mike O'Donnell's number. They've got Tommy." Mike's voice was breathless, urgent. "Chen, too. Station's compromised. Get to the secondary location." James felt his blood run cold. "How did they—" "Rodriguez." Mike's voice cracked. "She's been their plant for months, feeding them information about your behavior changes, your late nights at the station. She was waiting when Tommy arrived." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Sarah Rodriguez, his newest crew member, the one he'd personally mentored, the one who'd reminded him so much of himself at that age. Are they alive? For now. Hayes wants to trade their lives for the USB drive and Sarah Martinez. A pause. "You've got 1 hour, Cap. Corner of River and 4th. The line went dead. James leaned against a rusted pipe, mind racing. Sarah Martinez would be at the cabin by now, probably already coordinating with her FBI contact. The USB drive was safe with her. But Tommy and Chen— a soft scrape of boot on concrete made him spin, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. A figure stood in the doorway. Sarah Rodriguez, her service weapon aimed steadily at his chest. "You're early," James said quietly. "The trade isn't for another hour." "There isn't going to be a trade, Captain." Sarah's voice was different now, harder, professional. "Hayes wants this wrapped up clean. No loose ends." "Like Danny Martinez? Was that a clean wrap-up?" "Before my time, but from what I hear, he brought it on himself, just like you're doing now." She took a step forward. "The USB drive, where is it?" James studied her face, young, determined, completely convinced of her righteousness. "How much are they paying you, Sarah, to betray everything the badge stands for?" Something flickered in her eyes. "You don't understand. Midwest Municipal is the future. Their development projects are revitalizing dying cities, creating jobs, building communities over the bodies of innocent people. Necessary sacrifices for the greater good." She could have been quoting Hayes directly. "The old has to make way for the new. It's progress. It's murder. It's business." Another step forward. "And right now, my business is finding that drive. And Sarah Martinez, so let's try this again." The pipe above her head exploded. Chemical-laden water sprayed through the pump station as Sarah dove for cover. James was already moving, decades of firefighters' instincts taking over. He caught a glimpse of a figure in the upper walkway, Sarah Martinez, her small pistol still trained on the burst pipe. "That's for using my father's name," Martinez called. "Down. The next one goes somewhere less symbolic." Rodriguez fired blindly upward, her shots echoing off metal. But Martinez was already moving, her footsteps quick and sure on the catwalks above. "She's FBI," Rodriguez shouted into her radio. "Secondary target is FBI. All units converge on the pump station." James felt a smile tug at his lips despite the situation. "She's not FBI, Sarah. She's something much more dangerous. She's Danny, Martinez's daughter, trained by the man who wrote half the department's tactical protocols." As if to prove his point, the pump station's ancient lighting system suddenly blazed to life, momentarily blinding Rodriguez. In that instant, Martinez dropped from above, her boot connecting solidly with the younger woman's shoulder. The gun went flying. "Captain," Martinez called out, "the maintenance tunnels, now!" He didn't hesitate, sprinting for the access corridor as the two women grappled behind him. Rodriguez was younger, combat-trained, but Martinez moved like her father, efficient, Precise, always 3 steps ahead. They have Tommy and Chen, James called over his shoulder. I know. Martinez caught up to him, breathing steadily despite the fight. Chen managed to send a distress signal before they grabbed her. The FBI is already moving on the location. Hayes said, Hayes is lying. The trade is a trap. Martinez pulled him down a side tunnel as footsteps echoed behind them. They're planning to tie up all loose ends at once, but right now they're panicking. The chemical markers in the sprinkler system are spreading faster than they can contain. By morning, the entire infrastructure will be mapped in evidence they can't hide. They emerged into a larger tunnel junction. Emergency lights cast everything in a red glow, reflecting off the growing blue stains spreading through the pipe network. Tell me about the FBI contact, James said, as they paused to catch their breath. The one who's been building the case. Sarah's smile was pure Danny. She's very good at her job. She's also about to spring a trap 25 years in the making. She pulled out her phone, showing him a series of text messages. Right now, FBI teams are moving on 7 locations across 4 states. Everything we found in the tunnels, all. The evidence Tommy delivered to Chen, it's just confirmation of what they already suspected. The final pieces they needed to move. And Hayes doesn't know? Hayes thinks she's controlling the board. She doesn't realize she's just another piece. Sarah checked her watch. In about 10 minutes, the FBI will hit the trade location. They'll find Hayes's team waiting to ambush us, and they'll take them all down. But Hayes won't be there. Because she'll be here, James finished, coming for us personally, just like she came for my father. Sarah's eyes hardened. She was the one who gave him the ultimatum. Die in the fire or disappear. She wanted him to run, to look guilty, to help sell the story. But he didn't just run, did he? He started gathering evidence. He spent 25 years building a case, teaching me everything he knew, preparing me to finish what he started. She handed him a small device, a remote detonator, and now we're going to end it where it began. Footsteps echoed through the tunnels, multiple teams converging on their position. Above them, the pipes continued to turn blue, marking decades of corruption with methodical precision. Hayes will have the tunnel exits covered, James said. Sarah's smile was fierce in the red emergency lighting. Who said anything about using the exits? Dad left us a much better way out. She pointed to a massive drainage pipe, its end capped with a heavy metal grate. That feeds directly into the Cedar River, the same river where this all started today. And Hayes? Like you said, Captain, she'll come for us personally. Her pride won't let her do anything else. Sarah checked her pistol, and when she does, she'll find out why Danny Martinez spent 25 years teaching his daughter everything he knew about fire, water, and justice. James gripped the detonator, understanding flooding through him. The chemical markers, they're not just marking evidence. They're also highly flammable under the right conditions. Sarah's eyes gleamed with her father's determination. Hayes wanted to bury the truth in fire. Let's show her how that really works. Behind them, Rebecca Hayes's voice echoed through the tunnels. Nowhere left to run, James. Let's finish this where it started. Sarah Martinez met his eyes. Ready? To burn down some lies, Captain Mitchell. James thought of Tommy, of Chen, of Danny Martinez, and all the others who'd sacrificed everything for the truth. He thumbed the safety off the detonator. Lead the way, kid. Let's go make your father proud. The tunnels transformed into a labyrinth of shadows and echoes as James and Sarah Martinez raced through their curved passages. Above them, the chemical-stained pipes pulsed with an ethereal blue glow, marking their path like phosphorescent breadcrumbs. Behind them, Hayes's teams split up, their footsteps multiplying in the darkness. "They're hurting us," Sarah whispered as they paused at an intersection. She pulled a small tablet from her jacket, displaying a 3D map of the tunnel system. Two teams flanking, one behind. They think they're pushing us toward the dead end at Section F. But that's not where we're going. James studied the map, seeing it through Danny's eyes. The tunnel system wasn't just infrastructure, it was a masterpiece of urban engineering, designed with multiple layers of redundancy. And redundancy meant options. Dad spent years mapping these tunnels, Sarah confirmed, her fingers tracing a complex route. The official blueprints show 7 major junctions. The real number is 13. Hayes doesn't know about the Prohibition-era additions. Bullets sparked off the wall near them, followed by Hayes's voice. Think about Tommy, James. About Chen. You really want their deaths on your conscience? Sarah touched James's arm, sensing his tension. She's baiting you. The FBI team is probably already extracting them. Probably isn't good enough. James gripped the detonator tighter. We need to know they're safe before we light this place up. His phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. Package secured. Both birds in nest. Execute primary. Attached was a photo of Tommy and Chen, shaken but alive, with FBI agents visible in the background. That's the signal, Sarah said, checking her watch. FBI teams are moving on all Midwest municipal locations now. Hayes is about to get some very interesting phone calls. As if on cue, they heard Hayes's phone ring in the distance, followed by cursing. The pursuit footsteps became more urgent, less coordinated. She's losing control, James observed, getting sloppy. Good. Sarah led them down a narrow maintenance shaft. Because this next part is going to require perfect timing. The shaft opened into a massive chamber, one of the original water treatment tanks from the 1920s. Moonlight filtered through grates far above, reflecting off the pool of stagnant water below. The blue-stained pipes converged here, feeding into massive valves and pressure regulators. The heart of the system, Sarah explained, moving to an ancient control panel. Every modified sprinkler line, every sabotaged valve, they all connect. Through this hub, Dad called it the spider's web, because all the strands lead back to the center. James understood now. This is where they installed the master control system for their modifications, and where we're going to expose it all. Sarah pulled out a small camera, documenting the manufacturer's stamps and serial numbers on the equipment. The evidence was uploading in real time to secure servers. But first, we need to give Hayes one last chance to incriminate herself. James heard the bitterness in her voice. This isn't just about the evidence anymore, is it? She gave my father an impossible choice: die a hero in a staged accident, or live as a fugitive while his family suffered. Sarah's hands moved across the control panel with practiced efficiency. Then she had my mother killed anyway, making it look like natural causes. She didn't count on Dad teaching me everything he knew, preparing me to finish what he started. Where is Danny now? Safe, building cases against similar operations in other cities. A sad smile crossed her face. He wanted to be here for this, but we couldn't risk it. Hayes still thinks he's dead, and that advantage has kept him alive. Footsteps echoed above them. Hayes's voice carried down through the grates. I have to admit, James, I'm impressed. You and the Martinez girl have caused quite a mess. The FBI's seizing documents, serving warrants, but you're forgetting something crucial. And what's that, Rebecca? James called back, watching Sarah position herself behind a concrete pillar. Evidence can disappear, witnesses can recant, and accidents, well, accidents happen all the time in old infrastructure like this. Sarah's hand tightened on her pistol. Keep her talking, she whispered. 2 more minutes. Is that what happened? With Danny? James moved to draw Hayes's attention. Did he have an accident when he wouldn't play along? Danny Martinez was a fool who didn't understand progress. Hayes's voice grew closer. These cities needed renewal. The old infrastructure was dying anyway. We just accelerated the process by murdering people, by accepting necessary casualties in the march of progress. Hayes appeared on a catwalk above them, her tactical gear blending with the shadows. The insurance payouts helped fund the redevelopment. The property acquisition streamlined the process. Everything served the greater good. And the kickbacks? Sarah called out, causing Hayes to spin toward her voice. The offshore accounts? The bribes to building inspectors? Was that for the greater good too? Hayes laughed, a cold, empty sound. You sound just like your father. He had the same self-righteous tone when I offered him the choice. Die a hero, or live long enough to watch his family suffer. But he outsmarted me, didn't he? Faked his death, hid his evidence, and trained you to be his revenge. Not revenge, Sarah corrected, her voice steel. Justice. The chamber's ancient speakers crackled to life, playing back Hayes's words. Evidence can disappear. Witnesses can recant. Sarah's phone lit up with confirmation. The confession had been broadcast directly to the FBI teams. Hayes's face contorted with rage. She raised her weapon, but James was already moving, tackling Sarah behind the pillar as bullets chipped concrete. You think this changes anything? Hayes screamed, her composure finally cracking. I've got judges in my pocket, senators on speed dial. You can't touch. Her voice cut off as her phone rang again. This time she answered it. The color drained from her face as she listened. What do you mean, seized? The offshore accounts. We're supposed to be... She froze. How many judges? Which senators? Sarah's smile was fierce. Dad didn't just spend 25 years gathering evidence about the fire suppression systems. He mapped the entire corruption network. Every bank account, every bribe, every connection. Hayes threw her phone away with a scream of rage. Kill them. Kill them both. But her remaining team members were already backing away, reading the writing on the wall. In the distance, new sirens approached, different from the local police. Federal, it's over, Rebecca, James called out. The truth is finally catching up. Hayes's response was to empty her magazine at them, bullets sparking off pipes and concrete. But in her rage, she'd made a crucial mistake. The chemical markers in the pipes were flammable under the right conditions, and the right conditions had just arrived. Sarah nodded to James. Light it up, Captain. He pressed the detonator. The chamber erupted in blue flame as the chemicals ignited, racing through the pipes like lightning through veins. Hayes screamed as her catwalk began to melt, the evidence of her crimes burning away her last escape route. Time to go! Sarah shouted over the roar of the flames. She led James to the drainage pipe, its grate already loosened. Behind them, Hayes's silhouette wavered in the inferno, a fitting end to her empire of ashes. The Cedar River waited below, dark and cool and cleansing. As they prepared to jump, James heard Hayes's final desperate words. You can't erase progress, James. The future is inevitable. Sarah's response was pure Danny Martinez. The future is built on truth, Commissioner. Everything else is just smoke and mirrors. Then they were falling, plunging into the same river where their paths had crossed that morning. Above them, blue flames reached toward the night sky, marking the end of 25 years of lies and the beginning of something new. Something honest, something true. The FBI safe house sat on the outskirts of Cedar Rapids, its unremarkable exterior masking a hive of activity within. James watched through an observation window as Tommy Chen described the events at the old fire station to a federal agent, his hand still shaking slightly as he gestured. Beside him, Angela Chen was already typing on a laptop, her journalist's instincts turning trauma into testimony. Your crew member did well, Sarah Martinez said, joining James at the window. She'd changed into dry clothes, but her eyes retained their tactical alertness. He kept them talking long enough for the extraction team to get into position. Tell me how it happened, James said quietly. The real story. Sarah nodded, leading him to a situation room where multiple screens displayed surveillance footage. We've had eyes on Hayes for months. Every meeting, every call, every drop. But we needed something solid, evidence that couldn't be buried or explained away. She pulled up a video feed from earlier that evening. It showed Tommy arriving at the old fire station, Rodriguez waiting in shadows. Rodriguez thought she was running Hayes's operation, Sarah explained. But she didn't know about Officer Mason. The footage showed a uniformed police officer approaching Rodriguez from behind as she confronted Tommy. James recognized him, a 20-year veteran who'd worked the warehouse fire scene. "Mason's been part of our network for years," Sarah continued. "He was one of the first to suspect something wrong with the fire suppression systems. He's been feeding us information, helping us track Hayes's people." The video showed Mason smoothly disarming Rodriguez while 2 FBI agents emerged from concealment. The whole takedown took less than 30 seconds. "How many others?" James asked. "How deep does this network go?" Sarah touched a control, bringing up a map dotted with dozens of lights. Building inspectors who noticed patterns in the equipment, failures, insurance investigators who saw irregularities in the claims, beat cops who responded to too many accidental fires, even some firefighters from other districts, all of them collecting pieces of the puzzle. And Danny coordinated them all. From the shadows, Sarah's voice carried equal measures of pride and sadness. Every city where Midwest Municipal operated, he built a network of watchdogs. People who understood that progress built on bodies isn't progress at all. A new figure appeared in the doorway, a tall woman in a federal windbreaker. "Martinez, Mitchell, we just got confirmation. The chemical markers have spread through 60% of the modified infrastructure. Maintenance crews are mapping it all now." "Thanks, Kate." Sarah turned to James. "Special Agent Catherine Walsh. She's been our FBI contact from the beginning, the one Hayes was so worried about." Walsh's handshake was firm. "Your friend Tommy's evidence was the key. The storage unit contents combined with the infrastructure markings, it gives us a clear chain of causation. We can prove the fire suppression failures weren't accidents." "What about Hayes?" James asked. "Still missing after the tunnel fire." Walsh replied, "But her accounts are frozen. Her allies are scrambling to make deals, and we have teams processing every Midwest municipal office in 4 states. A young agent hurried in with a tablet. "Ma'am, you need to see this. Chen's article just went live." The screens filled with the Cedar Rapids Gazette's website. The headline blazed, "25 Years of Lies, How Corporate Greed and Civic Corruption Turned Fire Safety Systems into Murder Weapons." James read the opening paragraphs, recognizing Angela Chen's skilled hand in how she laid out the story. She started with Danny Martinez's apparent death, then wove a complex narrative of corruption, courage, and long-planned justice. "Chen's good," Walsh commented. "She managed to tell the truth while protecting our ongoing operations. The public gets answers about the warehouse fire, but we can still work the bigger cases." "Bigger cases?" James turned to Sarah. "There's more. Midwest Municipal was just one company," she explained. "Their model of infrastructure manipulation for profit, it's been copied in other cities, other states. Dad's been tracking similar operations across the country." Walsh nodded grimly. "Today's raids will send shockwaves through those networks. Some will try to burn evidence, some will try to run, but they'll make mistakes, and we'll be waiting." James thought of Hayes's words in the tunnel. "The future is inevitable." But looking at the room full of dedicated people, federal agents, local cops, journalists, ordinary citizens who'd chosen to stand for truth, he understood what Sarah had meant by her response. The future wasn't about corporate profits or political power. It was about people willing to fight for what's right, no matter how long it took. His phone buzzed with a text from O'Donnell. "Station's clear. Rodriguez's locker yielded a gold mine. You need to come see this." Sarah read the message over his shoulder. "Go. Agent Walsh and I need to coordinate with the other cities anyway. Dad's networks will be moving now, taking advantage of the chaos." "Danny," James said suddenly, will I see him?" Sarah's expression softened. "He wanted me to tell you, that night in the warehouse, you didn't fail him. You gave him the chance he needed to start this whole operation. By searching for his body, by refusing to believe the official story, you kept Hayes watching you instead of him." James felt 25 years of guilt begin to lift. Tell him, tell him I understand now. About the smoke and mirrors. Sarah smiled, Danny's smile full of determination and hope. Tell him yourself, once this phase is done, once Hayes is found, there's a cabin by a lake where an old firefighter would love to share a drink with his former rookie. Outside the safe house, dawn was breaking over Cedar Rapids. James could see the industrial district from here, the old warehouses still wearing their shrouds of mist. But now the mist was tinged with blue, chemical markers revealing decades of hidden corruption to the morning light. His radio crackled, a familiar voice from his crew. "Cap, you're gonna want to hear this. Scanners picking up something weird at the old pump station." James met Sarah's eyes. She was already reaching for her gear. The night wasn't over yet, but for the first time in 25 years, they were fighting in the light. Dawn painted the pump station's rusted exterior in shades of orange and blue, the latter color now pulsing from within like a chemical heartbeat. James and Sarah approached from different angles, accompanied by FBI tactical teams moving with impracticed silence. The scanner chatter had reported movement inside and a strange rhythmic sound echoing through the infrastructure. "Those pressure gauges shouldn't be active," Sarah whispered over their secure radio channel. Her tablet displayed real-time readings from the building's sensors. Someone's manually overriding the safety protocols. James studied the building's silhouette, remembering Hayes's last desperate words about progress being inevitable. "She's trying to purge the chemical markers from the system. That much pressure could rupture the main lines," Agent Walsh's voice crackled through their earpieces. "Send contaminated water into the city's supply." "No," Sarah corrected, her expression hardening as she checked her tablet. "She's doing something worse. The pressure's being directed into the old industrial zones, straight toward the evidence we marked. She's going to try to wash away the proof." James felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. Those lines are decades old. If they burst under that kind of pressure, half the district could collapse. Sarah was already moving, her father's tactical training evident in every step. "She's turning our evidence-marking plan into a demolition strategy." Walsh's voice carried controlled urgency. "My teams are evacuating the area, but we need that pressure contained. Mitchell, Martinez, you know the system layout. Can you reach the main control valve?" "There's a maintenance access through the sub-basement," James replied, remembering Danny's meticulous maps. "But Hayes will be expecting us to use it." Sarah smiled grimly. "Then let's give her exactly what she expects." She pulled up an overlay of the building's original 1920s blueprints, while showing her something she doesn't. James saw it immediately. A Prohibition-era smuggling tunnel that would take them directly under the control room. Danny's knowledge of the city's hidden infrastructure was still paying dividends. "Agent Walsh," Sarah radioed, "we need a distraction at the main entrance. Make it loud, make it obvious." "Coming up," Walsh replied. "But whatever you're planning, make it fast. Those pressure readings are reaching critical levels." James checked his borrowed tactical gear one last time. "Hayes has to know this is suicide. Even if she destroys the evidence, she's burned every bridge she had." "Some people," Sarah said quietly, "would rather burn down the world than admit they were wrong." She handed him a small device, another of Danny's custom tools. "Dad always said the most dangerous fires are the ones set by people with nothing left to lose." The FBI teams began their noisy approach to the main entrance, complete with bullhorns and spotlights. James and Sarah slipped into the hidden tunnel entrance, navigating by the blue glow that seeped through ancient brick walls. "She'll have Rodriguez's backup team with her," Sarah whispered as they moved. "The true believers who stayed loyal after the raids." "How many?" 3, maybe 4. "Professional contractors, ex-military." She checked her tablet's thermal imaging. "They're positioned around the control room. Hayes is at the main panel. Above them, They could hear the FBI team starting their breach. Hayes's voice carried through the old pipe system. "Just a few more minutes. Keep them back." James activated Danny's device, a small sonic transmitter that would interfere with radio communications. "Her team won't be able to coordinate now, and the pressure's almost at critical," Sarah added, watching the readings climb. "When those lines burst, they won't." James's voice carried the same quiet certainty he'd used during countless rescues. "Because Hayes made one crucial mistake tonight." "What's that?" She forgot that real progress isn't built on destruction. He checked the ancient joints where the tunnel met the control room foundation. It's built on people willing to preserve what matters while changing what's wrong. Sarah touched his arm, stopping him before he could set the breach charge. "Captain Mitchell, thank you for believing in Dad, for helping me finish this." "Thank me when it's done, kid." But he smiled. The first real smile since this long day. Began. "Now let's go remind Hayes what real firefighters do." "Save lives?" "That too." James set the charge. "But mainly, we stop things from burning." The breach charge detonated, and they moved up into history, carrying with them 25 years of truth, finally ready to see the light. The control room erupted in chaos as James and Sarah burst through the floor. Their entrance caught Hayes' security team in a perfect crossfire. 2 contractors went down instantly, hit by Walsh's teams breaching from above at the same moment. Hayes stood at the main control panel, her fingers dancing across gauges and levers. She didn't even turn around. "Right on schedule, James. Did you really think I wouldn't plan for this?" "The pressure's critical," Sarah shouted, checking her tablet. 2 minutes until the lines rupture." "Progress requires sacrifice," Hayes said, her voice eerily calm as she continued adjusting controls. "When these lines burst, they'll take half the evidence with them. The other half will be contaminated beyond use. And the resulting investigation?" She smiled. "We'll focus on the mysterious chemicals you introduced into the system." James moved forward, keeping his weapon trained on her. "Along with dozens of dead civilians? That's your solution?" "Acceptable losses. Urban renewal requires bold action." She finally turned, showing them what she held in her other hand, a dead man's switch. One burst line becomes many. A tragic infrastructure failure becomes a terrorist attack, and the investigation leads right back to Danny Martinez's vengeful daughter. Sarah's grip tightened on her weapon. "You really think that story will hold? After everything that's come out? Stories are like fires, my dear. They spread based on what people feed them." Hayes's eyes held a fanatic's certainty. "By morning, you'll be the zealot who killed innocent people to frame honest developers. Your father will be the bitter ex-firefighter who orchestrated it all. And I'll be the heroic commissioner who died trying to stop you. Inside these walls, maybe," James said quietly. "But out there, the truth is already spreading. Chen's article is live. The FBI has your files. Your entire network is burning down around you. Networks can be rebuilt. Evidence can be discredited. Bodies..." Hayes's finger tightened on the switch. "Bodies tell the stories we give them." The pressure gauges screamed warning. Sarah's tablet flashed red alerts. They had less than a minute. "You know what Danny taught me about evidence, Rebecca?" Sarah's voice carried an echo of her father's calm certainty. "He said it's like water. You can divert it, you can dam it. But eventually..." Understanding dawned in Hayes's eyes a moment too late. The floor beneath her feet suddenly gave way, weakened by the very water pressure she'd been building. She fell, catching herself on the edge of the control panel, the dead man's switch clattering away. "It finds its way to the surface," Sarah finished. James dove for the main shutdown valve as Sarah secured Hayes. His muscles strained against 25 years of corrosion as the gauges reached their red lines. With a sound like the building itself groaning, the valve finally turned. The pressure readings began to drop. "Clear," Walsh's voice carried down from above as her team secured the room. Buildings contained, evacuations holding at safe distance. Hayes laughed bitterly as federal agents secured her. You still don't understand. The world doesn't want truth. It wants progress, comfort, growth at any cost. No, James said, helping Sarah up. The world's just been waiting for people brave enough to show them a better way. Your way leads nowhere, Hayes spat. You can't build a future on antiquated ideas of right and wrong. Sarah knelt beside her, Danny's quiet strength in every word. We're not building on ideas, Commissioner. We're building on truth, on justice, on the foundation you tried to bury 25 years ago. Through the control room's broken windows, they could see dawn fully breaking over Cedar Rapids. Emergency vehicles' lights painted the old industrial district in red and blue, while the chemical markers still pulsed their own blue truth through the infrastructure's veins. Agent Walsh? Sarah called up. We're going to need some evidence. Teams down here. The control panel's maintenance logs might make interesting reading. Already on it. Walsh's smile was audible. I think your father would be proud of tonight's work. Hayes stared at Sarah with dawning recognition. You're not just his daughter. You're his legacy. Everything he built, everyone he recruited. It was all for this moment, not just this moment. Sarah helped James to his feet. For every moment when someone has to choose between truth and convenience, between justice and profit, between right and... She looked at the ruined control panel. Wrong. As federal agents led Hayes away, James studied the young woman beside him, seeing in her not just Danny's determination, but a new generation's commitment to doing what's right. Your father once told me that sometimes the best way to fight fire is to light one of your own, he said quietly. Sarah nodded, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of hope. Sometimes the best way to save something is to be willing to risk everything to change it. Together, they walked out of the control room, leaving behind the machinery of corruption and stepping into the light of a new day. Above them, the city, stirred to life, unknowing that its foundations had just shifted, not crumbling as Hayes had planned, but strengthening with the mortar of truth finally set free. The morning sun cast long shadows through Cedar Rapids as a cascade of revelations swept through the city. James watched from the steps of City Hall as Angela Chen's article triggered an earthquake in slow motion. Police cruisers converged on Midwest Municipal's offices. Federal agents emerged from the courthouse with boxes of documents. Building inspectors began marking structures with blue paint, matching the chemical stains that now mapped the conspiracy through the city's bones. 7 arrests in the last hour, Sarah reported, checking updates on her tablet. 2 council members, 3 senior building officials, and the head of urban development. They're all turning on each other. Like rats leaving a sinking ship, Tommy added. He'd insisted on joining them despite his ordeal, saying he needed to see this through. Chen's article hit harder than anyone expected. People are coming forward with stories going back decades. James studied the growing crowd of reporters and citizens gathering in the plaza. Hayes's network is unraveling. Not just here, Sarah said. Dad's contacts in other cities are moving now. Milwaukee, Des Moines, Kansas City, they're all finding the same pattern, the same modified systems, the same shell companies. A commotion at the courthouse entrance drew their attention. Federal agents were leading out Judge Marcus Hamilton, the man who'd signed off on the warehouse fire investigation 25 years ago. His face was ashen as reporters shouted questions. This goes beyond corruption, Agent Walsh said, joining them on the steps. We're looking at RICO charges, conspiracy, multiple counts of negligent homicide. The DA's office is already talking about special prosecutors. James watched another police cruiser arrive, this one carrying the fire marshal who'd helped cover up Danny's evidence. How many were truly corrupt versus just looking the other way? Does it matter? Tommy asked. People died because they chose not to act. It matters for the rebuild, Sarah answered, her father's strategic mind evident in her words. The ones who stayed silent out of fear might help us identify other modified systems, other potential failures we haven't found yet. A young firefighter from Station 3 rushed up the steps. "Captain Mitchell, you need to see this. We're getting pressure warnings from the Northside Industrial Park." James and Sarah exchanged alarmed looks. Hayes's desperate plan at the pump station might have failed, but she wasn't the only one with access to the modified systems. "They're trying to destroy evidence," Sarah realized, "using Hayes's same playbook." "But decentralized," James added. "Multiple locations instead of one big burst." Walsh was already on her radio, mobilizing teams. "How many sites are we looking at?" Sarah's fingers flew across her tablet, pulling up infrastructure maps now marked with chemical traces. 5 major nodes showing critical pressure, all in areas, with documented failures over the years. "They're going to flood the evidence zones," Tommy said. "Make it look like infrastructure collapse rather than deliberate sabotage." James felt the familiar clarity of emergency response settling over him. "Sarah, get your FBI teams to the primary junctions. Tommy, I need you coordinating with dispatch, routing emergency crews to evacuation zones. Agent Walsh, already on it," she replied, dispatching tactical units. "But Mitchell, these aren't firefighters or corrupt officials we're dealing with now. These are corporate cleanup teams, professional fixers." Then it's time they learned what real professionals look like. James turned to Sarah. "Your father's maps, the Prohibition tunnels, do they connect to the north side?" A slow smile spread across her face, Danny's smile. "Better. They connect to the original water main control station, the one place that can override every automated system in the grid. That's where they'll make their stand," James said. "Their last chance to bury the evidence before the FBI documentation teams arrive. Then that's where we end this." Sarah checked her weapon. "Once and for all." They moved quickly through the growing chaos, Sarah leading them through hidden passages that hadn't seen use since the days of bootleggers and speakeasies. Above, they could hear sirens and emergency broadcasts as the city mobilized to face what looked like massive infrastructure failure. But this time, the truth wouldn't be buried under accident reports and falsified inspections. This time, the evidence was literally written in the walls, glowing blue like justice finally come to light. They emerged into the original control station, a cathedral of copper pipes and brass gauges that put the pump station to shame. 3 figures in tactical gear were already there, working quickly at the ancient controls. "That's far enough," James called out, his voice carrying the weight of 25 years of waiting. "The only thing you're going to accomplish here is adding more charges to your indictments." The figures spun, weapons raising. Their leader's face was hidden behind a tactical mask, but his voice carried corporate authority. "This is bigger than you understand, Mitchell. Systems require maintenance. Sometimes that means removing outdated elements." "Outdated elements?" Sarah's laugh was cold, like safety regulations, like the truth. "Like obstacles to progress," the leader replied. "Now back away. These systems are going to fail. That's inevitable. The only question is whether you'll be counted among the casualties." James met Sarah's eyes, saw Danny's determination reflected there. Then he looked back at the corporate cleanup team, the last line of defense for a corrupt system that had cost too many lives. "You're right about one thing," he said quietly. "This ends tonight, but not with more lies. Not with more deaths." He touched his radio. "Agent Walsh, show them what real inevitable looks like." The walls erupted with federal entry teams, their timing perfect, their takedown precise. The cleanup crew didn't even have time to reach their weapons. As Walsh's team secured the scene, Sarah moved to the control panel, her fingers dancing across century-old levers with practiced ease. "Pressure's normalizing. Evidence zones secure. We got them, Captain. We finally got them all." James watched the sunrise paint the control station in shades of gold and blue, nature's light mixing with the chemical markers of truth. 25 years of lies exposed, 25 years of corruption burned away. "No, kid," he said softly. "Your father got them. We just helped carry his torch home." Through the station's old windows, they could see Cedar Rapids waking up to a new day. A day when the foundations weren't built on bodies and lies, but on truth finally set free. A day when justice, like water, had finally found its way to the surface. Sunset found James back at Fire Station 3, sitting in his office, surrounded by the weight of changed reality. Angela Chen's article had gone national, picked up by major networks and papers across the country. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing, with messages from other firefighters, some offering support, others sharing similar stories from their own cities. The photos on his wall looked different now. Every rescue, every celebration, every memorial, he saw them through new eyes. How many other buildings had been compromised? How many close calls weren't really close calls at all? A knock at his door pulled him from his thoughts. Tommy stood there looking exhausted but determined. Just got word from Walsh. They're finding modified systems in almost every major development project from the last 3 decades. The chemical markers are leading them straight to them. Any casualties from the pressure spikes? No. Tommy managed a tired smile. Sarah's warning system worked perfectly. Emergency crews had everyone evacuated before the cleanup team could trigger any failures. James nodded, relief washing through him. Then he noticed Tommy was holding something, an old piece of paper, carefully preserved. "Found this in Hayes's files when they were processing her office," Tommy said, handing it over. "Thought you should have it." It was the original incident report from the warehouse fire, the one that had supposedly killed Danny Martinez, but attached to it was something James had never seen, a handwritten note from Danny himself, dated just last year. "James, if you're reading this, it means the truth finally came out. I'm sorry for letting you carry the burden alone all these years, but I never doubted you'd keep searching, keep pushing, keep believing in what's right. You weren't just my rookie, you were my conscience, and that's why Hayes could never break. You, no matter how hard she tried. Some flames can't be extinguished, some truths can't be buried. Thank you for keeping mine alive, Danny." James felt his eyes burn as he carefully folded the note. Did Sarah see this? She's the one who found it. "Said you should come out to the cabin when you're ready. Someone there wants to thank you in person." Outside, he could hear the familiar sounds of shift change, boots on concrete, equipment being checked, crews exchanging updates. But there was something different in the air now, a weight lifted, a shadow gone. "What happens next, Cap?" Tommy asked quietly. "With the department, with the city?" James stood, looking out his window at Cedar Rapids as the last light faded. The chemical markers still glowed faintly in the infrastructure, a map of corruption. "Transformed into a blueprint for renewal. We rebuild," he said simply, "but this time we do it right. No shortcuts, no buried truths, no progress built on bodies." Tommy nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I think Danny would like that." Danny always liked things built to last. James smiled, touching the note in his pocket. Built on solid foundations. The night shift crew was gathering for briefing, their faces carrying a new awareness of what their job truly meant. James Mitchell joined them, ready to help write the next chapter in their department story. This time, one built on truth. A week after Hayes's arrest, James stood before a packed community meeting in the Cedar Rapids Public Library. Families of victims from the past 25 years filled the seats, their faces a mix of grief and vindication. Angela Chen sat in the front row, recording everything, while Agent Walsh stood quietly at the back, watching the healing process. "Begin. The truth isn't always easy," James said, his voice carrying to every corner, "but it's always necessary. What happened in our city, the lives lost, the trust broken, it can never be undone, but it can be learned from, it can be built upon." Sarah Martinez stepped up beside him, carrying a thick binder. "This contains every modified system we've identified so far, every building, every inspection report, every name involved. It's going to take time to fix them all, but starting today, nothing stays hidden." An elderly woman raised her hand, her eyes bright with unshed tears. My husband died in the Maxwell Street apartment fire. They told us it was an electrical fault. It wasn't, Sarah said gently, opening the binder to a marked page. The sprinkler system had been deliberately modified. We have the work orders, signed by Hayes's people. Your husband's death wasn't an accident. It was the result of criminal negligence, and now we can prove it. The woman nodded slowly, decades of doubt finally settling into certainty. Around her, other families began to share their stories, their suspicions now confirmed by the evidence Sarah and Danny had gathered. Tommy, standing near the podium, noticed James's hands trembling slightly as he listened. 25 years of carrying this weight, of knowing but not being able to prove. It was finally over. A young firefighter from another station stood up. How do we make sure this never happens again? By changing the culture, James replied. Starting today, every inspection includes independent verification. Every system modification requires multiple signatures. Every complaint gets investigated, no matter how small. And every whistleblower gets protected, Sarah added. What they did to my father, forcing him into hiding, making him choose between truth and family, that ends now. The FBI has established a dedicated task force for infrastructure safety. Violations. Any firefighter, any inspector, any worker who sees something wrong has a direct line to federal investigators. The meeting continued as the sun set outside, stories of loss transforming into commitments to change. James watched the faces around him, seeing hope replace resignation, determination replace fear. After the meeting, Walsh approached with news. Hayes is talking. The federal prosecutor offered her a deal, reduced charges in exchange for naming every official she ever bribed, every company that helped modify systems. She'll take it, Sarah said. Hayes always believed in saving herself first, James thought. Of Danny's note, of the burden finally lifted. The truth really is like water, he said quietly. Once it starts flowing, there's no holding it back. Outside the library, Cedar Rapids glowed in the evening light. Somewhere in those streets, crews were already at work, replacing corrupted systems with honest infrastructure, building something new on foundations of truth. The healing had begun. 1 month after Hayes's arrest, the changes in Cedar Rapids were visible everywhere. Construction crews worked around the clock, replacing compromised systems. City council meetings, once conducted behind closed doors, were now streamed live. Every building permit, every inspection report, every safety certification was publicly accessible online. James watched from the roof of Station 3 as another Midwest municipal sign came down, replaced by a banner announcing Community Oversight Committee, building a safer city together. The chemical markers had mostly faded, but they'd served their purpose, mapping out decades of corruption for investigators to follow. Milwaukee just arrested their fire commissioner, Sarah said, joining him at the roof's edge. Same pattern, same modified systems. Dad's network is helping them trace it all back. How many cities now? 12, with more coming forward every week. She handed him a tablet showing Angela Chen's latest article. Chen's calling it the Foundation Movement, firefighters and inspectors across the country stepping up, speaking out, demanding transparency. The article was accompanied by photos of protest signs. No more hidden hazards, safety over profit. Truth rises. But what caught James's eye was a quote from a rookie firefighter in Kansas City. Captain Mitchell showed us that one person standing for truth can spark a revolution. They're giving you too much credit, Sarah said, seeing where he'd paused. They're giving all of us credit, James corrected. Your father, you, Tommy, Chen, Walsh, everyone who chose truth over convenience. Below them, a training session was underway in the station yard. The new protocols were being demonstrated, multiple inspectors checking each system, body cameras recording every certification, digital records instantly uploaded to secure servers. Hotel complex on 5th Street passed its re-inspection today. Sarah reported. First major building to meet the new standards. The contractor said something interesting when they finished. What's that? That doing it right the first time actually saved them money. No shortcuts, no bribes, no modified systems, just honest work and proper materials. James smiled, remembering Hayes's words about progress requiring sacrifice. Turns out, real progress comes from building things to last. A call came in over the radio, a routine check of a sprinkler system at an office building. Under the old regime, it would have been a cursory inspection, maybe even a rubber stamp. Now it would be thorough, documented, verified. Want to ride along? Sarah asked. See the new protocols in action. James looked out over his city. Scarred but healing, shaken but stronger, the sun caught the windows of rebuilt structures, glinting like truth finally brought to light. Lead the way, kid, he said. Let's go build something that lasts. The Cedar River flowed quiet and clear in the autumn sunshine, its waters no longer carrying the weight of unspoken secrets. James stood at the Ellis Park boat ramp, the same spot where Sarah Martinez had emerged from the water 6 weeks ago. With a note that changed everything. Thought I'd find you here, a familiar voice said behind him. James turned, his heart catching in his throat. Danny Martinez stood there, his hair more grey than black now, his face weathered by years in hiding, but his eyes still carrying that same determined light. Took you long enough, James managed, his voice rough with emotion. Had to make sure. Hayes's network was completely dismantled first. Danny moved to stand beside him, looking out over the water. Sarah told me what you did, how you helped her finish what I started. She did all the hard work. You trained her well. I trained her to be careful. You taught her something more important. Danny picked up a smooth river rock, turning it in his hands. You taught her that sometimes standing your ground matters more than staying safe. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the river flow. Finally, Danny spoke again. I'm sorry, James, for letting you carry the burden all these years, for not trusting you with the whole truth. You did what you had to do to protect your family, to build the network we needed. James looked at his old mentor, though I have to admit, that was one hell of a long game you played. Danny smiled, the same smile Sarah had inherited. The truth is worth waiting for, worth fighting for, even if it takes 25 years. He held out the river rock. Sarah said you should have this, something about rivers and truth always finding their way. James took the stone, feeling its weight, smooth on one side, rough on the other, like truth itself, he thought. Sometimes gentle, sometimes harsh, but always real. What happens now? He asked. Now? Danny looked around at the city they'd both served, both fought to protect. Now we build something new, something honest. He paused. The FBI's putting together a special task force. Infrastructure safety, corruption investigation, whistleblower protection. They want me to run it, and you're considering it, on one condition. Danny turned to face him fully. That you help me lead it. Your experience, my networks, Sarah's determination. We could make real change, not just here, but everywhere this kind of corruption has taken root. James looked down at the river rock in his hand, then out at the water that had started this final chapter. He thought of Hayes's words about progress being inevitable, and how she'd been right, just not in the way she'd meant. When do we start? He asked. Danny's smile widened. We already have. Every honest inspection, every protected whistleblower, every truth brought to light. It's all part of something bigger, something lasting. The river flowed on beneath them, carrying old secrets, away and bringing new possibilities with each passing moment. Above them, Cedar Rapids stretched toward the horizon, its foundations no longer built on lies, its future no longer mortgaged to corruption. You know what Marie used to say? James asked quietly, remembering his late wife's wisdom. She said that healing isn't about forgetting the past, it's about building a future worth remembering. Danny nodded, understanding in his eyes. Then let's build something worth remembering, old friend. One truth at a time. 1 year later, Fire Station 3 hosted a different kind of gathering. The old brick walls, which had once held so many secrets, now displayed framed copies of Angela Chen's articles and photos of infrastructure reforms across the country. The foundation movement had grown into something neither Hayes nor her. Conspirators could have imagined a nationwide revolution in building safety and corporate accountability. James adjusted his new badge, the golden shield marking his role as head of the Joint Infrastructure Safety Task Force. Beside him, Tommy Chen, now captain of Station 3, was describing the latest safety innovations to a group of visiting firefighters from Milwaukee. Every inspection gets triple verification now, Tommy explained, demonstrating the new digital system, body cameras, independent oversight, real-time data upload. The days of modified systems and buried reports are over. Sarah Martinez, wearing an FBI tactical instructor's uniform, added, "And every whistleblower gets federal protection. What happened to my father won't happen to anyone else." The television mounted on the wall showed Rebecca Hayes being led into federal court. Her plea deal had exposed corruption in 37 cities, leading to over 200 arrests and wholesale reform of building safety regulations. The crawler beneath the footage read, "Former Commissioner Hayes testifies in landmark infrastructure fraud case." Chen's book comes out next month, Danny Martinez said, joining them with his own task force badge gleaming. Foundations of Truth, telling the whole story from the warehouse fire to the national reform movement. He smiled at his daughter, "Though I hear she had some help with the technical details." "Speaking of technical details," James said, "the latest numbers just came in. Infrastructure-related fatalities down 70% nationwide. Whistleblower reports up 300%, and building safety compliance at an all-time high. Because people know someone's watching now," Sarah said. "Someone's listening. Someone's ready to act." Through the station's windows, they could see Cedar Rapids stretching toward the horizon. New construction rose alongside restored buildings, each one certified under the strict protocols they'd helped establish. The river that had started it all flowed beneath rebuilt bridges, past renovated warehouses, through a city reborn on foundations of truth. Angela Chen arrived carrying advance copies of her book. The cover showed a simple image, a blue-stained pipe beneath a beam of light. "First printing sold out in pre-orders," she reported. "People want to know how one fire department in Iowa sparked a national revolution." "They did more than that," Danny said quietly. "They proved that progress doesn't have to come at the cost of lives. That profit doesn't have to mean corruption. That truth given a chance really does rise like water." James touched the river rock on his desk, his reminder of where it all began. "Hayes said the future was inevitable," he mused. "She just didn't understand what that future would be. A future built on honest foundations," Sarah finished, "built to last." Outside, a new shift was starting. Firefighters checked their equipment under protocols designed to protect both them and the public. Building inspectors conducted their rounds with transparency and pride. And somewhere in the city's infrastructure, the last traces of blue chemical. Markers were fading away, their work long since finished, their truth finally told. The old station's radio crackled with a routine call. Tommy's crew moved with practiced efficiency, heading out to ensure another building was truly safe. James watched them go, remembering Hayes's words about progress requiring sacrifice. She'd been wrong. Progress didn't require sacrifice. It required courage, dedication, honesty, and sometimes it required someone willing to stand in front of a rushing river and say, "No more lies, no more hidden dangers, no more buried truths." The future wasn't inevitable after all. It was built, one honest foundation at a time. Danny clapped James on the shoulder. "Ready to head out? We've got 3 more cities asking for help setting up task forces." James nodded, picking up his river rock. "Lead the way, old friend. We've got some foundations to build. Together, they walked out into the sunshine of a new day, leaving behind the shadows of the past and stepping into a future they'd helped create, one built on truth, protected by vigilance, and destined to last, because some things, once brought to light, can never be buried again, and some truths, like rivers, just keep flowing forward, carrying hope toward tomorrow.